Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Terry Fralich's 1985 Asian Journey, Part 3. Terry was with his father, Harold Fralich, my father's cousin, and they had quite an adventure with a group of Americans and some Nepalese who were helping them. And hiking in the Himalaya mountains of Nepal, the highest mountains in the world, really an amazing adventure that they had. April 30th, 1985. 10,000 feet in a remote part of the Nepali backcountry, 15 miles from the Tibetan border. Yesterday was more than just difficult. It was an extreme physical and emotional challenge. We left Hindung at about 6:30 a.m., our usual time, and climbed to the top of a ridge above the village. There was a lovely meadow there, and we stopped to enjoy a spectacular view of one of the Ganesh peaks. Then the trail entered the woods. The rain the night before had left the rocky path very slippery, and to make matters worse, there were wet leaves everywhere, hiding the scattered rocks, adding more lubricant underfoot, and generally making secure walking impossible. Lunch was early, at about 9:45 a.m., because the chosen spot provided the last water we could find until we reached camp late in the afternoon. We sat on wet, slippery rocks while final lunch preparations were being made. It was damp, cold, and difficult to take even a few steady steps. For whatever a combination of reasons, I was not in a good mood. Ram, our Trek Siddhar, had said that the afternoon's hike was long, steep, and on poorly maintained trails, and I was feeling apprehensive about Dad's safety. I spoke to Ram about it, and he said that he would assign Kerpa to work with Dad for the rest of the day. My apprehension was well-founded. After a short walk through the woods, we began what turned out to be more than 2.5 hours of virtually vertical ascent. It was not hiking. It was actually rock climbing, hand over hand, pulling yourself up with the constant danger of life-threatening falls. Dad was in the front of the line the whole time with Kerpa right behind, helping him with foot placement, giving him boosts, and generally providing security. It was the first time on the trip that I felt it was better to let one of the Sherpas help Dad. I was tense and emotional with anxiety and simply didn't feel I could provide the best assistance. The going was extremely slow as we literally pulled ourselves up the side of the ridge. Most of the time I couldn't see Dad, and on this particular day, on this route, I think it was for the best. I felt fear and anger that the group was undergoing this. Dad certainly wasn't the only one who needed help. It was a serious challenge for all. Over and over I thought of the admonition from Dune, "Fear is the mind killer." With each reminder, I brought my focus as best as I could to getting myself safely up the climb. We finally reached the top of the ridge. Everyone was fatigued, but there was a sense of relief that was uplifting. After a brief rest, we moved up through the woods. It was still steep, but at least we were actually hiking now. We kept thinking we were getting closer, but each time there seemed to be more, some new challenge, a descent over wet rocks, a traverse over a mossy hillside, a squeeze around a ledge on a narrow trail. On and on it went. The group got strung out, and there weren't enough of the Sherpas to help all of those that were really getting exhausted. I had been with Dad ever since we finished the steep rock climb, and we were doing okay. But he was really getting tired now, as were Kura and Gareth, who were in our vicinity. For the first time on the trip, Dad's spirits lagged, and discouragement was evident in his voice. I felt perfectly capable of helping him, but I was feeling his struggle intensely, as well as a strong sense of responsibility for his being there at all. Ram had caught up to us by this time and was helping Dad and the others around us where it was needed the most. Finally, I spotted Kern coming back toward us. "Only a few 100 yards," he yelled, and I felt a great swell of emotion rise up in me. We walked a few minutes more and reached an opening, looking down on a sloping meadow below us. Cheers went up from the group that had already come in, and Dad, feeling an obvious sense of relief, let out a loud yell in return. "Editor's note, there you go, Harold." We walked down into the campsite, and Dad joined in the boisterous conversation about the day's experiences. I wanted to let Dad just sit there with the group and relax, so I collected our packs and duffels and hauled them to the tent to set up for the night. Once inside the tent, alone and out of sight of the others, tears came to my eyes, and I cried freely with the emotion I had been holding in all afternoon. 3 more of the group came in after Dad and me, and with each arrival, new cheers arose from the campsite. Tea time was special that afternoon. Padam made a light rum punch instead of the usual tea. At 10,000 feet, the rum hit empty stomachs quickly, and the exhaustion from the day's challenge eased into a giddy playfulness. We joked, laughed, and talked loudly together till nightfall, glad that we were all safely here. May 1st. Camped in a clearing about a half an hour above the village Hindung. We were supposed to move to higher elevation yesterday, but after the ordeal of the day before, Kern decided that the safety and health of the group as a whole would not allow it. Too many were too exhausted or had slight ailments and injuries. As a result, yesterday was proclaimed a rest day. Those that wanted could take a hike to the ridges above us, but camp would not be moved, and the slightly infirm would have the whole day to rest and recuperate. At about 7:30 a.m., Ram, Kerpa, and 9 of us from the group headed for the upper ridges. We climbed to about 12,000 feet, finding a good dusting of snow during the latter half of this hike. The objective was better views of the Ganesh Himal range, but everything was too fogged in to allow any view at all. We built a fire on the snow-covered ground and talked about movies for about an hour, hoping the sky would clear. It didn't, and we headed back to camp at about 11 o'clock a.m. The rest of the day was relaxing. Dad and I played bridge with Dalton and Pauline and generally eased away the afternoon. By 6 o'clock p.m. it was raining again, the 3rd night in a row. We finished dinner under the kitchen tarp and returned to the tent for an early evening. This morning we headed back on the trail that had been so demanding 2 days before. The first part of the hike was difficult, but it was the wall, the steep climb straight up the ridge, that had worried me so when we came up. For some reason, I didn't feel nearly so apprehensive today. Sila, the head porter, or Nike as his position is called, had been assigned to work with Dad, and I felt that the 2 of us could get him down all right. After 2.5 hours, we came to the wall and began a slow step-by-step descent. In many places, we turned Dad toward the mountain to have him come down backwards, and actually placed his feet on narrow ledges or rock outcroppings as he came down. Other times, he simply sat down and scooted down a narrow passage. It was slow and difficult, but Dad hung in there, and we made it without incident in a little over 2 hours. Strangely, Dad was very surprised by the steepness. He simply didn't remember how sharp a climb it had been when we went up. Dad and I arrived at camp a little after 2 o'clock p.m. It was an early day, even though we had been on the trail for almost 7 hours. The rest of the day was relaxing, the first serious washing in about 3 days, some light laundry, and even a little bridge. It was a good day, and it was good to be off the wall. May 2nd. Camped at about 9,000 feet and about an hour above Nibiru. It's raining again tonight with thunder roaring up the valley. In fact, the weather pattern has been consistent this week. For the last 5 nights, the rain has started about 7 o'clock p.m. It was a bit late tonight. Kept at it for 2 to 2.5 hours and then cleared for a beautiful morning. Actually, we've been thankful for the timing. When you're tucked snugly into your tent, the rain is barely an inconvenience. If it were to pour during the day while we were hiking, it would be quite another story. Today was varied and fascinating. We passed through Hindung again, where we had left a catch of food 3 days before. While we were there, we put on quite a show for the locals. Dad danced to Nepali drumming with Naimi, the little Sherpani, lady Sherpa, who was one of our porters, and we all sang several verses of When the Saints Go Marching In and You Are My Sunshine. I could just hear the natives thinking, "Boy, these people, white people, sure are funny." Anyway, everyone seemed to enjoy our little road act. Right after an early lunch, we had one of our little adventurous thrills in the form of an exciting water crossing. The stream was roaring over huge rocks 20 feet below us as we each individually scampered up a very rustic, slanted, swaying footbridge. As someone said, it was definitely an E-ride. Next we came to Neberu, a small village on the opposite side of the valley from Hindung. There, Ram bartered for a sheep that was to be a special meal tonight for the porters and staff, as well as for us. The bidding started somewhere in excess of 600 rupees, with the contract finally being concluded at 480 rupees, a little less than $30. The bewildered little thing was led along with us up the mountain, slaughtered at our camp, cooked and eaten in various forms. The reports were that it was very tasty. While in Neberu, we also had the opportunity to talk to a family that was building a new stone house. The construction here is accomplished basically by finding and carefully placing flat rocks on top of each other, fitting the right size into the right space so that all the walls are constructed without the benefit of mortar. Wood beams are then used to support the roof. This particular house apparently was owned by one of the rich families of the village, and had some very nice wood carving done by a local artisan for the door and window frames. Construction began in November and purportedly had 2 weeks to a month to go, so about 6 months in all. Seeing the careful placement of each individual rock provided yet another confirmation of the patience of these people. May 4th. Back at 9,000 feet again in a mossy forest 3 hours from Labu. We dropped down off a ridge yesterday. The trail was steep, but at least it was hiking, not hand-over-hand rock hopping. When we reached the bottom of the gorge, there was a wonderful surprise waiting for us. A rushing stream forming washing and swimming pools of all sizes. Most of us had not had a bath or an extensive washing for several days, since we moved to a higher altitude. It was only a little after noon, but the setting was too enticing to leave, so we decided to take a half day off and spend the night perched above the stream. It felt so good to dive into the cool mountain water, to sit in the hot sun, and to feel totally clean again. By late afternoon, we were ready to try our harvest of the previous day. Lynn and I had spotted and picked some mild marijuana on the trail outside Neberu, and it had dried in the sun. Rolled in a leaf, Nepali style, it was very wild but pleasant, and added a nice accent to the evening's activities. Yesterday was Paul's birthday. Tomorrow is Kira's, and Gareth's next week. Rita made laurels for each out of ferns and pieces of colored string and fabric she pulled off a skirt, and Padam baked a cake, which was served up with a rum punch. It was a great birthday party. We danced Nepali dances to Kirpa's drumming, did silly routines, and sang everything from 40s, sang everything from 40s and 50s tunes to whole Broadway musical scores. When the full moon rose brilliantly over the ridge above us, we spent about 15 minutes singing nothing but moon songs. With spirits high, we managed to whoop it up until after 9 o'clock, an ungodly late hour for us. I think everyone turned in with the warm glow of a wonderful day. Today brought a whole other range of experiences. We were on the trail by 6:30 a.m. and moved quickly up and around a medium ridge to enter a beautiful valley. On the opposite was a large village that we had first seen from 2 ridges away the morning of the day before. Its mere size and the lushness of the terraces around it suggested that it was a prosperous community. As we reached the valley below the villages, our speculation was confirmed. There, providing our way across the stream, was a well-crafted wooden bridge with neat stone walls leading to it on both sides. Only a healthy town would have the time and energy to build a public way of this quality. Across the bridge and up through the terraces, water rushed down beside the trail to irrigate the rice paddies we were passing through. Obviously, Labu, as the village was called, had plenty of water and used it to its advantage. In fact, water added great aesthetic value to Labu, also running in streamlets through the village and rushing over rocks and falls down to the terraces. Walking into Labu, a community of probably more than 1,000 inhabitants, was truly like walking several centuries back in time. The people, the buildings, the livestock, the narrow winding paths through town all had a strong medieval feeling. Everyone was happy to see us and amused by our aimless and curious wandering through their day. The small children frequently did not know what to make of us, and as we approached, went scampering to their doorways, giggling all the way. I'm sure that we were the first Westerners some of the younger ones had ever seen. Again I was struck by the beauty, character, and friendliness of the people. They are Tamang here. The women of this ethnic group, this tribe, are distinguished by the large, brass-colored earrings and nose pieces, jewelry which is worn both on a post through one nostril, and a hanging piece which appears to be attached by piercing the fleshy part of the nose between the nostrils. It may not sound too appealing, but it is very attractive as worn by the Tamang women. We wandered through the paths of Labu for quite some time, fascinated with the groupings of houses. Often the livestock, cows and chickens, mostly, were kept on an open first floor, with space in front of the houses for a small feeding and resting area. The family then lives in the closed-in second floor above the animals. The signs of relative prosperity of Labu were evident in many forms. Some of the houses were mortared over the stone. One house had several paintings of Buddha on the front. There was a large school building and what appeared to be an open playing field of some kind. Labu even boasted a small store. After ducking under the low doorway and entering the tiny dark room, we quickly perused the 4 or 5 shelves on the stone walls and found the cookies and hard candies were the only things from the limited stock that were of interest. The town square was denoted as usual by access to flowing water. This one was a nice stone structure with 3 spouts coming out, another sign of the village's size and health. David pulled out the National Geographic he had in his pack and instantly drew a crowd as he flipped through the pages. The color photos were obviously a real treat for the kids. They also got a great charge out of looking through our cameras and binoculars. Labu was such a delight. I took my time, dawdled a lot among the houses, and felt a deep sense of wonder and amazement in absorbing the daily routine of this beautiful village. 5 days' walk from a road and ages away from my time. To be continued. Now we have several comments on this. And the first comment is from John S. Ray, my father, quote, "This issue gave me great pleasure to read. Terry Fralich writes beautifully, and his word pictures of the strange and wonderful sights in Nepal really bring the area and the people into clear focus. In view of the extreme physical demands of the trip, I was really quite surprised that my cousin Harold undertook the many very steep climbs. My sincere congratulations to both Harold and Terry for successfully living through the adventure and being able to tell us all about it. All in all, an outstanding ZFMC. I look forward to the next part of the Nepal adventure. John S. Ray, Cleveland, Ohio." And the next comment is from Patricia A. Ray, my sister, quote, "Thanks for the Fralich story of hiking in the Himalayas. I'd read it at Lakeside before, but it was still inspiring. Patricia A. Ray, M.D., Boston, Massachusetts." And the next comment is from my wife, Alice Garcia Ray, quote, "The adventure of Harold and son Terry was very interesting and enjoyable to read. Mil gracias, amigo. Alicia G. Garcia, Ni Ray, Quezon City, Philippines." And the last comment is from my mother's mother, my grandmother. "Terry Fralich's writing of his trip with his dad came. I started to read it and didn't stop until I finished it. It's really very interesting. Made me feel tired, all that hard climbing, but some lovely scenery, and such kind and caring people there. I love to travel, as you know, but that is one trip I know I could not manage. Only the fittest. So nice of Terry to be so concerned for his father." Augusta F. Smallshaw, Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. So that concludes today's presentation. Terry Fralich's 1985 Asian Journey Part 3. Good luck to you with your efforts in family history, if this interests you. Finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, and photographs, and interviewing elderly relatives while they are alive. Thanks so much for watching. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History, with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. Thanks again for watching. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.